Witajcie Polacy rodacy! Dzisiaj specjalnie dla Was Ameryki na bieżąco odcinek ze stolicy, czyli z Waszyngtonu, nie z Warszawy. Jesteśmy w Ameryce, właśnie stąd nadaję z punktu widzenia emigranta. Ale dzisiaj odcinek specjalny. Jestem w tym mieście po raz drugi. Pierwszy raz byłem tutaj 10 lat temu i spędziłem 3 dni w Muzeum Historii Lotnictwa. Było bardzo ciekawe, ale dzisiaj jestem z innego powodu. Spędzę jeden dzień w Kongresie, gdyż dzieje się historia, tym razem związana z Polską tutaj. Otóż pan Wojciech Jeśmian, czyli prezes Kongresu Polonii Amerykańskiej Południowej Kalifornii, zorganizował tutaj spotkanie z Polonią właśnie dla kongresmenów, i na którym to będzie przekonywał o odrzuceniu ustawy 1226 oraz tej ustawy senackiej 447. I to nie jest, jak już sami wiecie, kanał polityczny, ale jeżeli coś się tutaj dzieje w Ameryce związanego z Polską, to wiecie, że możecie na mnie liczyć, dlatego zapraszam na materiał związany z tym spotkaniem. A na obszerniejszy materiał możecie liczyć na kanale Taste of Immigration. Już niedługo, jak tylko się ukaże, na pewno dam link. A teraz zapraszam. Zobaczcie, co się działo na spotkaniu tutaj z kongresmenami. A oto budynek Rayburn, w którym swoje biura mają kongresmeni, senatorzy. Jestem teraz w jednym z budynków, w którym swoje biura mają kongresmeni. Jest to bardzo ciekawe tutaj ustawienie. Po prostu wzdłuż ściany tam różne biura, nie poselskie, ale właśnie tych kongresmenów. Tutaj stoję przed biurem Andy Barr z Kentucky. Jest flaga amerykańska, jest obok flaga, jak domyślam się, Kentucky. Proszę bardzo, poznaję ją, spędziłem w Kentucky 4 lata. Commonwealth of Kentucky. Darren Sotos, Florida. Następna jest Amy Bera, MD, to chyba pani doktor z Kalifornii. No i pan Wojciech Jeśmian, czekający tutaj. Za kilka minut mają spotkanie właśnie z Congresswoman z Kalifornii.
1860.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
To jest spis ludzi i biur w budynku Long Wharf, jednego z 3 budynków, gdzie zasiadają, no senatorzy też. O, senatorzy, nawet nie wiedziałem. Myślałem, że tylko reprezentanci Kongresu, ale no tylko w jednym budynku. 3 takie budynki. Ile jest tych kongresmenów? Prawie 500, ale pamiętam. Z senatorów chyba po 2 z każdego stanu. No to prawie 600 osób musi tutaj w tych 3 budynkach zasiadywać. A kolejka się ustawiła do Congresswoman z Kalifornii. Trochę mi tutaj głupio teraz nagrywać, ale ci ludzie się modlą. Modlą się ci ludzie pod biurem Congresswoman z Kalifornii. Hi, I noticed you were praying from this office. Why are you doing that? Is that...
Well, we represent a delegation from across many different states who comes here to pray for all of our congressmen, our senators, and even at the Supreme Court. So our job isn't to pray for issues so much. It's just to cover our leaders with wisdom and ask for Lord's providence for all of it.
Because the Bible says, pray for your leaders that it might go well with you. And as Americans, we're really quick to criticize our leaders, but maybe not so quick to pray for them. And so we're taking a different approach. We're going to pray for them first, and maybe not complain as much, but pray more.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Keep doing that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Czekając na pana Jeśmiana, chodziłem sobie po tych wszystkich budynkach, robiłem zdjęcia i co chwilę napotykałem jakąś polską delegację, która właśnie albo miała wchodzić do jakiegoś biura, albo wychodziła z jakiegoś biura, przedstawiając swoje dokumenty odnośnie ustawy 1226.
Chcemy wejść do następnej osoby i przekazać dokumenty, które opracowaliśmy na temat naszej akcji i to jest
Ciekawe w ogóle to jest tutaj wszystko. Dostępni są ci kongresmeni, można do nich wejść, czasami trzeba się omówić. Ale jest takie, wydaje się, przystępne w miarę. Zaraz pokażę Wam resztę tego korytarza tutaj. Tulsi Gabbard z Hawajów. No nie wiem, czy to akurat jest dla kogoś dobra wycieczka z Hawajów tutaj do Waszyngtonu, bo a te czarne flagi co to są? To nie są przypadkiem te POW? Tak, zobaczcie, to są te POW. Pamiętacie tę flagę z odcinka o patriotyzmie? No, to właśnie są tutaj. Ciekawe czemu, dlaczego one tutaj wiszą. A tutaj jeszcze jest jakaś pani, która ma drużynę koszykarską kobiet i mężczyzn też. South Carolina, Joe Wilson w takim razie z południowej Karoliny i tak sobie odkleił drzwi. Co myślicie o czym? A tutaj Joe Wilson, 2nd District of South Carolina. I co tu można zrobić? Tu można się umówić w ogóle na wizytę i pójść i porozmawiać z kongresmenem. No, taka dostępność jest. Oczywiście nie wiem dokładnie jak to jest, ponieważ sam się nie umawiałem, więc nie wiem na ile to jest tutaj rzetelne i prawdziwe. Może to jest, wiesz, taka też ściema, ale nie wydaje mi się. Wydaje mi się, że można po prostu iść, porozmawiać. Panu Wojtkowi się udało, więc ciekawe. Nowe rzeczy się tutaj dowiadujemy na kanale z punktu widzenia emigranta. A to właśnie ten Brad Schneider tutaj ma chyba jakąś książeczkę z przodu i można wyjść i nagrać, porozmawiać chyba, zobaczcie. 27. Raz, dwa, trzy, cztery, 5 osób, które weszło tutaj. No. A oto biuro Mercy Capture z Ohio, która sponsorowała spotkanie Polonii.
Idzie pan zaraz.
No jak wrażenia?
No, ciekawe spotkanie, słuchali, myślę, że się nauczyli dosyć dużo. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. This is a very important event for the Polish American community. We haven't been very active here on the Capitol Hill, and definitely there is a huge room to improve as far as our presence here and delivery of all the things that are important to our community. I'm very happy actually that we have this opportunity, and Marcy Capture is the person that we owe actually some thank you note. We'll send this to her. Without her support and sponsorship, this meeting would not take place. It's a pity that there's a relatively small group of us here. We have lots of people invited. This also means that we have lots of work to do within the Polish American community. This is a very important subject, and this thing has enormous possible impact, will have possible impact on Poland and Polish American community in the future. So the bills S447 and HR 1226 is something that we have to concentrate on. This is the beginning stage. This will not be one battle. This is a war that will take a long time, and we need to be present here most probably at least once every month. And this is the initial meeting. Polish community, Polish American community needs to be present and really cognizant of all the problems that those bills pose. There is many different dimensions to the issues that we face here. This is legal issues, political, moral, and so on. So we'll start with a small context, historical context, and this context will be delivered by Andrzej Prokopczuk, and we'll follow up with testimony of people that were directly affected by the historical issues of the past. We have two sons of Mrs. Urbanowicz-Gilbride, who as a child was a slave laborer under German occupation in Poland. She was also sent to concentration camps. So this testimony will actually show that the issues, the way they are framed right now, put things in the wrong historical perspective. We need to put more pressure on Polish side of this story, and this is not delivered properly. And this is our role to deliver it, especially in the halls of Congress, because the other side completely monopolized those issues, and this is something that cannot stand. So without any further ado, Andrzej, the microphone is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Andrzej. If anybody would be interested, I have some copies of my presentation, a very excellent review of slides which will be not presented. I'm sorry, because due to technical reasons. And actually, of course, my presentation, I believe quite important perhaps, but has been aimed at those who do not know too much why we oppose this legislation which is in front of the Congress right now. So we believe to see here some, not exactly perhaps congressmen and women, but some staffers. Sorry they are not here, but okay. So I do apologize if I will bother you with telling you the things which you know very well. But just to remind, why are we here? As you remember, perhaps the Department of State, according to the legislation, will have to produce annual reports which will be verifying the nature, extent to which national laws of the countries who signed so-called terrorism declaration of Holocaust area assets in Prague have addressed, which way they have addressed the issues of compensation to Holocaust area survivors. And what is obvious, and what we are so much afraid of, this legislation, if really introduced and passed and enacted, would in particular single out Poland, of course, who during the war, the Second World War, had been by then time the largest Jewish diaspora in Europe and in the world. The next sentence is obviously aimed at those who are not present here. I want, on behalf of you, to declare that the Polish American community fully supports the worldly goal of providing compensation to the Holocaust survivors, of those, but some other facts should be taken into account. Before passing the legislation, which could lead to severe economic effects on Polish economy, the following facts should be taken into account. Poland, as all of us of course know, was one of the chief victims of German and Soviet aggression during the World War II. Poland, like no other country, was left in ruins after the war. And Polish survivors, non-Jewish Polish survivors, never received any compensation for the brutality that they endured during the war time. So historical background is like this, but let's start on a more positive tone. Do you remember it's exactly 106 weeks. That's anniversary then when President Woodrow Wilson presented to the Congress on January 8, 1918, so-called the 14 points. And number 13 stated, I will.
Thank you very much. You know, this is very important to kind of remind people here that the Jews were not the only class of people that were affected by the Second World War, and this is obviously this side of history is understated to the point that it's almost negated. Our Polish history is unknown, especially in the corridors of power here, and we need to always bring this to them in the sense that they have to remember that there's more to the Second World War than just Jewish suffering. In fact, this is something that is a small part of the Second World history. It's important to remind everyone that there were over 60 million people killed during Second World War. So a sense of proportions is kind of important also. We need to remind this context also because of this media campaign against Poland that is happening right now, that is completely removed from the context of true historical data, and without it you cannot really reach any kind of sensible conclusions in the political sense. You have to kind of understand what really happened, and that's our role. We have to bring this context to the forefront. We need to move with our program. We have two guests. These are the sons of Mrs. Urbanowicz-Gilbride. As I mentioned, she was a survivor of camps and slave labor, and this type of testimony is very important because this is completely overlooked. So the floor is yours.
Dzień dobry. My name is Stephen Gilbride, and I'm here today in a personal capacity to deliver a message from my mother, who cannot be here today to deliver this message personally. I'm also joined here today by my brother Timothy Gilbride. We are grateful for the opportunity to present on the contents of Bill H.R. 1226, Justice for Uncompensated Survivors Today Act of 2017, and its companion bill S447. I myself am the son of a survivor of the atrocities inflicted on Polish citizens by Nazi Germany throughout World War II. In my early 20s, I learned more details about my Polish Catholic grandmother, who survived several concentration camps, experiments, sickness, and starvation. In 1984, I attended the Catholic University of Poland in Lublin, Poland. I was present when the country faced down Soviet suppression with the U.S.-supported Solidarity movement. I have personally visited Poland several times since attending university there to learn more about my heritage and the history of Poland. I have visited the German death camps, including Auschwitz and Majdanek, where almost 25% of the German Holocaust victims were non-Jewish undesirables. I'd now like to present to you a message that we hope can make to Congress from a Polish Catholic Holocaust survivor, my mother. I have a message to the representatives of the U.S. Congress from my mother. This is Bożena Urbanowicz-Gilbride, a Polish Catholic Holocaust survivor. Please vote against the JUST Act of 2017 because this act discriminates against Polish Holocaust survivors like me. While the act recognizes and redresses the suffering of 3 million Polish Jews, the suffering recognized to addressing the suffering of 3 million Polish Jews, the suffering of 3 million ethnic Poles and other non-Jewish victims is notably omitted and effectively excluded. The United States must not discriminate against non-Jewish racial, ethnic, or religious groups whose members may be in the same position as Jewish claimants. This legislation sanctions open discrimination of other victims of Nazi persecution, such as Polish Catholic Holocaust survivors and their descendants. Such exclusion of non-Jewish victims of the Holocaust creates the appearance of impropriety and reasons for grave concern. If adopted, Bills H.R. 1226 and S. 447 will sanction drastic discrimination of the Polish Catholic Holocaust survivors like my mother. The bills are intended to enforce the non-binding 2009 Terezin Declaration on Holocaust-era assets that discriminates against the Polish Catholic Holocaust survivors and other victims of German persecution. The Terezin Declaration refers in several places to Holocaust, Shoah, and other victims of Nazi persecution. However, when it comes to the details of how to rectify the consequences of wrongful property seizures, it emphasizes the property of the Holocaust Shoah victims and ignores the property of other victims of Nazi persecution. The use of the term Shoah addresses those entitled to property compensation only to the Jewish victims and boldly excludes non-Jewish victims, such as millions of Polish Catholic Holocaust survivors. Accordingly, the bill sanctioned the reprehensible discrimination of the Polish Catholic Holocaust survivors as well as other victims of Nazi persecution and their heirs. As a Polish Catholic Holocaust survivor, my mother, Bożena Lubinowicz, has been struggling her entire life for equal treatment and proper recognition of the suffering of the Polish people under German occupation in World War II. For over 30 years, she has been teaching about the Holocaust throughout the United States based on her own life experience as a Polish Catholic Holocaust survivor. She was recognized with an Excellence in Teaching Award by the New York State Board of Education for her invaluable contribution to deepen the understanding of the Holocaust. Together with a German Jewish Holocaust survivor, my mother published an award-winning book, Children of Terror, that tells the story of Jewish and Polish children during the Holocaust in Europe. My mother shares that her contributions and achievements in telling the truth about the Holocaust came at a very heavy price. For speaking up about the Polish suffering under German occupation, my mother shares experiences of being systemically abused, discriminated against, called names, offended, bullied, verbally attacked as anti-Semite, and even physically confronted for giving testimony of Polish suffering during the Holocaust. A few of the experiences she has shared include, in 2002, my mother prepared a report about her experience of teaching the Holocaust as a Polish Catholic Holocaust survivor in the USA and presented her findings to a Polish-Jewish dialogue group. She reported that in the 13 years of teaching the Holocaust, from 1989 to 2002, she collected over 2,500 questionnaires and letters from students and teachers and spoke in both private and public schools, universities, churches, and civic organizations. She had an opportunity to listen to comments from survivors, educators, students, and the general public. Based on this experience, she reported on the systemic discrimination of non-Jewish victims in the teaching of the Holocaust in the United States. A teacher told my mother, "I have never heard of the Polish victims or the 5 million others. How come our schools teach only the story of the Jewish people?" My mother replied, "Please raise this issue with your principal." The teacher replied, "I can't say anything. My job would be on the line." In 1993, at a Holocaust U.S. Memorial Museum seminar for teachers, a young Jewish teacher opened the discussion with the preposterous statement, "In Auschwitz, Poles pushed Jews into the ovens." My mother states that schools are using inappropriate books as teaching tools where the Poles are portrayed in a negative light. Books such as Painted Bird and Mouse that promote ethnic division are widely used for Holocaust education in the classrooms. In a private school, one student once said to my mother, "We don't need to worry about the Holocaust. "We are not Jewish, they only kill Jews." In one of the public schools, an assistant principal, walking my mother to the auditorium, said to her, "I was not in favor of having you come as a Polish Catholic speak on the Holocaust." My mother shares other examples of hostility and intolerance that she personally experienced as a Polish Catholic Holocaust survivor. She states, at the first hidden conference in New York, when she introduced herself at a workshop as a Polish Catholic Holocaust survivor, she got very angry looks. Later, as she walked down the hallway, a woman came up behind her, hit her on the shoulder, and cursed her. She wondered why one human being would do that to another. Once she was invited by a member of a Jewish group to a meeting in New York to tell them how she teaches the Holocaust. When she finished the presentation to the group, she asked the group whether there is a reason why they can't broaden their Holocaust education. They responded that they can't. So be it. The member friend who invited her to speak there later apologized and stated he wanted to do something good, but it did not turn out that way. The above examples illustrate a persistent pattern of discrimination against Polish Catholic Holocaust survivors and a systemic bias against non-Jewish victims in Holocaust education. Applying her own life experience to demonstrate what happened to ethnic Poles under German occupation in World War II, my mother, Bożena Obanowicz, has been on the forefront of the struggle for truth and justice for Polish Holocaust survivors. She reminds us that the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington officially recognizes 11 million victims of the Holocaust, 6 million Jewish, and 5 million non-Jewish victims, often referred to as others. My mother states, that is who we are, others, the non-Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Students come to the Holocaust Museum in Washington from all over the world, she continues. I myself interviewed parents and students who walked out of the Holocaust Museum in Washington and asked them, "What did you learn?" They rarely mention that they learned anything about the Gypsies, the Poles, Jehovah's Witnesses, gay people, or the handicapped. They tell me that they only learned what happened about the Jewish suffering in the Holocaust. My mother, Bożena Obanowicz, states, "We, the Polish victims of Nazi Germany, are not given the proper recognition in the teaching and recognition of the Holocaust. Today, we are merely the other victims. We have no face, no name, we are nobody. That is how the Polish Catholic Holocaust survivors are treated. Is this the way we should be treating each other?" My mother emphasizes that such practices must stop. The Holocaust messaging must be deepened and broadened. I want the survivors who leave the Holocaust Museum, which is 49% federally funded, to be able to tell me what the Germans did to the non-Jewish Poles, to the Gypsies, and to other undesirables. Millions of Polish victims must not be treated as anonymous others of the Holocaust. My mother, Bożena Obanowicz, believes we cannot expect the next generation to live in peace if we are promoting one side while diminishing the other side of this important story. If we keep distorting history in such a cruel and hateful way, we will not have peace on earth, and the slogan, "Never again," will mean nothing eventually. My mother's experiences lead her to conclude that the systemic marginalization of Polish victims of the Holocaust, relentless exclusionary practices and policies, coupled with disregard towards ethnic Poles, represents a persistent pattern of discrimination of the Polish victims of World War II. The rapidly spreading anti-Polonism based on drastic distortion of history and inflammatory rhetoric results in the stigmatization of the Polish ethnic group. The long-lasting grievances of the Polish American community for the disregard of Polish victims and their descendants subjected to German and Soviet genocide have been transformed into a pattern of systemic abuse of the entire Polish ethnic group, exacerbating tensions in ethnic relations in the American society. My mother concludes, the glaring discrimination of the Polish Catholic Holocaust survivors referenced in bills, H.R. 1226 and S. 447, represents a deepening of ethnic discrimination of Polish Americans. We call on U.S. Congress to immediately withdraw the shameful and inequitable legislation, assure proper respect for Polish victims of Nazi Germany, in particular Polish Catholic Holocaust survivors like my mother, Bożena Ubanowicz, and fundamentally support Holocaust representation that is a balanced presentation of history, promotes friendship and peace, and discourages discrimination, ethnic bias, and the manipulation of history. Thank you for your time, and that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Mr. Gilbert, thank you very much. This is a very powerful testimony, and I think that we'll use it as part of our media presentation that will be delivered to all 435 members of Congress. This is obvious that this type of testimony is needed here. So I would like to concentrate on the bills. The S447, which was approved by acclamation, is something that could actually still come back. House always has an option. They can act on their own bills, or they can adopt bills that were already approved by the Senate. So we are opposing both bills. We're not opposing just the House of Representatives version of it. There are small differences between those two bills. They are quite similar, but actually there is one major difference, and this difference is that the Senate version speaks about compensation, and the House bill elevates this to a different level. They are talking about restitution, and this is obvious that this is a big difference. Restitution is a term that would involve return. Return is not a good word in this context. I will explain why. It would basically be a giveaway of massive numbers of property in Poland, with most probably the top value of maybe even 20% of all the real estate in Poland, because the statistics that are used here say that there were approximately 10% of Jewish population in Poland, and that Jewish population owned approximately 20% of all the real estate in Poland. So if this is the upper limit of the demands that we can expect, it would mean only that a Polish state would be considerably not only diminished, but also threatened, the very existence of it, because no country could withstand this type of impact. Having demands of this magnitude would be extremely important to understand early on, so we can create some kind of strategy to counter this. So it is obvious that at this point it seems that we still have a chance, a fighting chance to stop it. This bill has been kept here for almost a year. Within the year, the House has not moved on it, and it's been almost 2 months right now from the moment when it was accepted by acclamation on the Senate's side, and there's still no action. I understand that as of today we have only 9 co-sponsors of this bill, and it means that this is not a very popular bill. I don't want to say that we should kind of minimize the threat of it. It's obvious that there is lots of things that don't meet the eye. There is lots of most probably pressures in the back rooms that we are not aware of, but as far as actual numbers, when you will look at the website of the House of Representatives, this is just 9 co-sponsors. Our task is to reach all 435 representatives. We should not concentrate on people that are involved in Polish American community and are dependent on Polish votes. We have to go to all people in the Congress, and only then we can actually have a chance to stop it. It's not enough to invite of 2 or 3 Congress people who always attend our meetings because they are dependent on our votes. So we have to spread this message as widely as possible. So this is this economic side of it as far as impact for Poland. There is a legal side of it. Obviously, all these claims have not really much real base in the sense of existing law. The very term restitution is suspect here, because you can have restitution only if there is a clear chain of title. And in this case, we have claimants that are completely unrelated to the people of Polish citizens of Second World War who were murdered by the Germans. And it is obvious that in legal terms there is no continuity as far as legal titles. So we have to stress this side. Legal side is the basis of the arguments that we have here. There is also another issue with this bill, use of words airless. There is no such thing really, because whenever someone is dies and leaves the property that is not that there is no heirs and there is no will left, property like this is cheats to the state in which the property is located. This type of law exists everywhere. This is a universal principle. Every country of today's world actually applies this principle. So those two terms basically tell us that there is very legal background here that the other side could use, and that's why we have this escalation of hate that we see on the media side, because they're trying to equalize lack of any basis on the legal side with this hate campaign that is basically amplified here with every passing week. There's another aspect of it that we need to stress. This is the political side, and the political side affects also United States. This bill, or those bills, are extremely unpopular in Poland, and if we look at what is happening in Polish internet, it is obvious that there is almost no positive reaction to it at this point. Every person has negative feelings, and the image of the United States has suffered greatly. So in geopolitical terms, it would have certain influence on the position of the United States. United States is very dependent on Poland as far as politics in Europe. Poland is the most pro-American country in Europe by far, and if this changes, it will open way to major shift of power in Eastern Europe. It would allow most probably some kind of closer cooperation of Germany with Russia, which would challenge the position of the United States and maybe even push the United States out of Europe. This is the aspect that we need to stress also. So I don't want to take too much time. I think that those things are the most important that we have to remember and concentrate on. And I know that there are some people that would like to also have some say here.
My name is Marek Konopnicki. I am from Northern California. and I just want to share with you a few tidbits from a meeting in my congressional district. It went rather well. One comment that that my senior staffer made was, thank you for bringing it to our attention. I was not aware of it. So this is, as you know, the bill has only a handful of sponsors, and perhaps, maybe on purpose, it's not that widely disseminated and discussed. So he mentioned so he said, thank you, and you guys should try to, say, raise awareness. And I said, well, that's why we are here. So another point that he made was, let me know when you know from your sources that something is happening about the bill that is gonna be, discussed in front of committee or whatever. And I said, and likewise, I hope that you will tell me when you know. So basically, let's try to establish some engagement with our representatives so that we are on the same wavelength. I was asked, and by the way, how many Polish American are there in our district? So, and I know that we have that information somewhere, except that I didn't have it on me, but it might come up and it's useful. Then I also, since I know that there are no millions of us in Northern California, I said, well, but we are, but there are nearly 10 million of us in the States, and in the districts when we are not that much represented, does it mean that when we get excited about something that we will not participate in getting in districts where we are not heavily represented, if it will, if it would serve our cause?
I would like to address the fact that this is the first gathering of the Polish Americans at the Capitol Hill, and we are here to demonstrate our objections towards Bills 1225, House of Representatives, and Senate Bill 447, right. But I would like to address this problem because those bills deal with the Holocaust era problems. And we, the Polish Americans, like Mr. Gilbride presented to us, we have been subjected to discrimination on this subject for decades right now. So we are the group that has been subjected to massive and significant discrimination in terms of the Holocaust education. So I would like to appeal to all of us, to the American Polonia. We are here today for the first time, but Polonia needs to be back on the Capitol Hill. We need to make sure that our voice is heard with respect to the discrimination of the Polish Catholic Holocaust victims in the Holocaust education. This is a long-term problem, and I call on Polonia to stand up and speak up for the suffering of the Polish people during the Holocaust era and for the equal treatment of the Polish victims of World War II. Accordingly, I appeal to the Polish Americans to come back, to join us here on the Capitol Hill, because in order for our voice to be heard, we must be here on the Capitol Hill. And I hope that the next time there will be many, many more of the Polish Americans here at the Hill. Thank you. And this is the book. This is the book I recommend everybody to acquire this from the Amazon.com. The book that shows side by side the suffering of the Polish children and the Jewish children during the Holocaust. this is the testimony, and we need to reach out to our Polish American victims of the Holocaust to make sure that their stories are told, are known, and are widely informed. Thank you.
I'm representing Polish American Congress, New Jersey Division, as well as newly formed Polonia organization, Coalition of Polish Americans. So we have gathered here because we have a piece of legislation which concerns us, Polonia, and piece of legislation which put facts which are not correct. It talks about uncompensated survivors, restitution of heroes' property, and because we are people who are very keenly aware of what is the truth about history, I think it compels us to be here and fight this type of legislation. So I would like to also point out that this type of legal activity, and I'm not going to dwell into the legal things because I think a lot of congressmen realize very well that legally this legislation is on a very shaky grounds because of international law, because of other issues. However, politically, anything could be done in this day and age, as you're well aware. That's why this type of political activity is very important. I would like to point out also, a lot of us have contact with Poland, and Poland is being criticized for the reprivatization law. I think this reprivatization law is probably going to, or be able to stop this type of demand for hairless property or restitution of hairless property. What we know that there was some work done in Polish Sejm on this reprivatization law, but again it was put ad acta, ad calendas grecas for some probably bickering and under the table dealings. We don't know why, but I think there should be some pressure on Polish government to finally finish that. This law also, this piece of law also compels the State Department to monitor what State Department is already doing, which is human rights. But if this will be enacted, it will also have to monitor the restitution of hairless property in those countries, which is State Department is going to do something which is against the international law, I believe, hairless property. So as United States citizens, we should act because we do not want our country to act in that way. Projection of the American power is to some degree desirable in certain parts of the world, of course, including our kin country, but not necessarily in that way. Finally, I would like to say thank you, Ward, to Wojtek Jeśman from California, who has done a great job alerting all of us and spreading a lot of information, creating a very resourceful website with all the information. I think this is an excellent service, and I would like to thank you for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jeśman, for the presentation. Yes, I came from Massachusetts to this meeting, and I'm very glad I'm here. Thank you for organizing this event. My short appeal is to all of us, just please go to the activity on grassroots. Go to the people around you. Don't concentrate on yourself, on those very so-called important people without us, single, unknown, but many people, we can do nothing except wasting time. Go to your constituents, go to those who trust you, and spread the issue and convince them that they have to take the issue to their own hands. Please do it. Thank you.
we have to wrap up because we have all kinds of meetings scheduled right now, and we cannot be late for the people that are waiting for us. I just want to say one more last thing. The two bills present also a major legal issue as far as the fact that they not only maybe encroach, but they actually violate the agreement that was signed in 1960 between Poland and the United States. And under this agreement, Poland was indemnified from any and all additional claims as far as properties that were nationalized in Poland under the communist takeover. The bills refer to properties that were taken from the Jewish community prior to that. So this part is not covered by the agreement signed in 1960 that dealt with nationalized properties mostly. But Poland is not responsible for the acts of the German state between 1939 and 1945. And that's why Poland is not the right place to come with all the demands as far as everything that happened prior to the communist takeover. So I just wanted to make this distinction. Thank you very much for coming. Now is the main part of this event. We are going to as many offices as we can, and we need to deliver our message, and we have to be back. So I would like to get commitment from all of you that this is not the end of this program that we have here. We have to come back in a month, maybe, depending on the developments with respect to those bills here. But the earlier we come in force, the better. And each of us, each of you, needs to create a movement around you. And this is the most important part. This is not about structure that will create a committee and presidents. We need to have a grassroots movement in many cities. Without it, we cannot really win this fight. And this is important that all of us understand that. Thank you very much.
Let's now go to Poland during the war. So you can see now Poland before the war too. That's how the territory is, and access to the sea secured as well, in a bit controversial way, because this was the start, as you know, of the Second World War, because of this so-called Gdańsk or dancing corridor. And then occurred September 1st, without any premonition, German invasion of Poland. September 17, Poland attacked by the Soviet Union. And October, everything was over. Poland was completely conquered and its territory split between these two invaders. On October 8, as you know, perhaps Hitler came to Warsaw to take the parade of the successful German troops, and he declared the Polish state dissolved and all of Polish nationals are stateless citizens, which the next 5 years proved very well. They were actually without any rights. They were stateless, they were not protected by any rights, even those who they were supposed to be secured by international conventions. In June 1941, after the invasion of the Soviet Union, German invasion, all the pre-war territory was then conquered by the Germans. A good chunk of it, western part, was incorporated in the so-called Third Reich, And central part, it was so-called German occupation zone called the General Government, with the famous governor, Dr. Hans Frank, in charge. And the eastern part, as you can see one of the slides, it was under so-called Ostzone, you know, it was under German occupation with also terrific terror. So, 41, also before, no Polish state, no Polish administration, no state of Poland. Only, that's what people had to endure, a regime of savage terror, semi-starvation, and ruthless economic exploitation, let's say. And that's what was in Poland, was absolutely nothing to compare with the rest of Europe conquered by the Germans. First of all, from the start, the campaign against Poland was of a savagery previously unknown in modern Europe. This is maybe not an exact statement, because the beginning of the First War in August 14 also started with Germans unexpectedly shelling and destroying peaceful civilian city, Kalisz. So, you know, actually, they have already, there was a taste of this 20-something years before. But let's say that's what happened in September 39. That was absolutely nothing to compare. Not only the troops, German troops were fighting with military, but also at the same time destroying the rest of the population. I would not cite you the proper, because I don't remember right now the second variant, but Hitler in August said, you have to be ruthless. You have to, perhaps even if I remember correctly, recollect properly, to kill anything which deserves to be killed. Yeah. So the scale and extent of brutality in occupied Poland far exceeded anything experienced in any other occupied country. The terror with introducing of so-called collective responsibility, unknown anywhere else. There were at random herding up, round-ups of people in the streets, 50, 120, and then public execution or eventually hanged. As you know, for every killed German, and it has been happening, then at least 100 Poles had to be killed. This was the official attitude, the official policy. But I said at random. No, it was more important. First of all, it was directed at elimination of potential Polish leaders, government officials, academics, teachers, lawyers, doctors, clergy, business people, artists. They were killed on the spot, or like in Palmyra, outside Warsaw, just very beginning of the war, or sent to concentration camps, or rounded up at the Jagiellonian University, for instance, and then disappeared in a Sachsenhaus or Dachau, and then most of them, or all of them, were killed. And there was also hundreds of thousands of people, especially young people, taken as slave workers to Germany. Thousands perhaps have never returned, And Polish territory was just an economic colony, because not only was under the German rule, but it was exactly even factories, shops, and some enterprises were appropriated and taken over by the occupiers. Some of them, like famous or infamous, in my opinion, Mr. Schindler, profited in this in both ways. He is, for instance, very praised for, let's say, saving the lives of quite a few Jews. But they did this at paying very high price. There were only those that survived who were able to pay very, very huge money. So what I'm meaning, people like him were taking benefit of the war both ways. Factory, working factory, slave labor of those people, and then big extra paid by them eventually. The question which also very often comes up, why in Poland Holocaust did happen? Between us, then I will mention that what is most often supposed, and the position is that, well, this was a very good ground, you know, because of the anti-Semitism which was prevalent in Poland in between the war, which is not true. There was the situation of Jews between the wars was totally comparable to the rest of the European countries. And let's be also reminded in United States, it has become, you know, in current times, let's call it the heaven of Jewish population. It's, there were many inscriptions. Dogs and Jews are not allowed here. Yeah? So anti-Semitism was something which was existing all over the world. But why in Poland? That's a very simple reason. No other country had a little over more than 3 million Jewish people. Why so many? And the slide will show you. And the numbers are like this. Because Western Europe didn't want them to be with them going back many hundreds of years ago. England was the leading country, as you know, the leading country in many civilized arrangements. They claim so. So in 1290, they were expelled the Jews. France follows 1306, and then again in 1394. Hungary, middle of the 14th century, German states, since 1348 till the end of the 15th century. Then Spain. I don't know why Spain is so famous for expelling Jews, perhaps because the population was perhaps very, very big, that's right. And Portugal, just more at the same time. That's the answer. And the Jews, but not the full answer, they were expelled, but they found a good place to live in Poland, starting with our Kazimierz Wielki, who did this for, we believe, and there are good proofs for that, for economic reasons. He needed educated people educated in finance, banking, etc. And Jews in big numbers settled in Poland. And they thrived, you know, they thrived, you know, they became bankers, lenders, and very important managers of very big estates, especially in the East, when Poland became Rzeczpospolita obojga narodów, so big, you know, estates in the East developed. And this is extra remark, no surprise that, for instance, there in the East in particular, when the local population, I'm referring, starting with this famous Khmelnytsky uprising, those who revolted, mostly peasants, mostly Ruthenian or Ukrainian peasants, they were killing, first of all, Jews. Of course, Catholic clergy, of course, Polish noblemen, but Jews were next. This is recorded in history as the first well-known, very big pogrom on Eastern territories. Actually, this will only a few words. A Princeton historian and very good, I think, lady, amateur, if I pronounce her name, she is of Chinese origin, from Philippines. She wrote a book about oppression of minorities. And she pointed out, very rightful, I say, that most cases such feeling against Jews in Europe, Chinese in Asia, were because of economic reasons. And she cited her aunt who was killed by her servants in the Philippines, for instance. But she wrote that Poland was the first to have such a problem, which is not full information. It was, yes, a territory which constituted a Polish state at the time, but it was not done by Polish. But extrapolation, everybody will say it had to be done by Poles. And this would be repeating many more times. So in 1939, as you can see from my numbers cited, 3,350,000 Jews in Poland, starting in 1500 with 50,000 Jews. So explosion. So what it proves? Excellent living conditions. They had autonomy, as you know, separate kind of Sejm, and they had their own administration and judiciary system as well. Never else it has happened. But Germans offered them a new treatment. At the very beginning, as you know, starting the end of 1939, beginning of 1940, they were collected or herded into ghettos, isolated from the rest of the population, which at that time was accepted in most cases. There are evidence from the Jewish sources, special diaries, that it has been accepted by Jewish population Russia with relief. They felt more safe. They were somehow isolated from this terror which was outside the walls. Of course, it lasted quite short. Starting 1940, it began what you had to begin, you know, inside. And after, the time came for Wannsee Conference 42, and they decided to kill all the Jews. Yes, you know. And I would like to remind you, you know this, but you don't need to remind, this Polish territories, the penalty for helping in any form the Jews was the death for those who offered this help and their families. But in spite of that, over 50,000 of Jews were saved by the Poles, and as you know, a good few thousand of people were recognized by the Jewish Yad Vashem. So once again, to summarize, German camps operated by Germans on German-controlled territory. And Poland, after the Second World War, the largest loss of people, 22%, especially cultural professional elites. The greatest economic loss, it has been calculated at least $8,400 per capita. The so-called national wealth reduced by close to 40%, 60% of industry destroyed, infrastructure, for instance, bridges, 60%, railways, transport, etc. And of course, cultural treasures, at least close to 50% disappeared. As a good evident example, the Capitol was destroyed on purpose, as has been estimated by 85%. So that's the way Poland has affected. That's the way why we have the right to oppose any trial to get any extra compensation. Let's say, don't forget the Jews, the Jewish society, and the so-called Jewish survivors. They have been getting compensations for over 40 or 70 years by now. Thank you so much.